In just a few years, the whole world of crypto is going to look radically different.
Today I sit down with Edan Yago to discuss the revolution of BitcoinOS.
So what BitcoinOS is it's an operating system for Bitcoin.
How much bigger Bitcoin is about to be.
Bitcoin itself as a network is on its way to being a $100 trillion network. And then there is a question, which are the projects that are going to best integrate into that and become sort of the smart contract platforms, the asset management platforms for Bitcoin.
Major Cardano news that affects you if you hold Cardano.
Cardano realized, wow, this is something that Cardano is like perfect for.
And watch today's whole video as Yago shares how you can get involved, an exclusive opportunity just for the Altcoin Daily audience.
I can actually give you a little bit of alpha.
Please hit the like button to support me. Thank you BitcoinOS for partnering up today. And let's start, Yago. Remind us, how'd you first find crypto?
So it was a lot of different things, but basically my family were terrorists fighting against the apartheid government in South Africa. They were forced to flee the country because obviously. And so in the middle of the night, some of my family left. We had to get money to them. I ended up at the age of like 9, becoming a gold smuggler, smuggling gold out of South Africa to get money to my family. Grew up with a deep interest in freedom for obvious reasons. Started to work on AI and neural networks back in 2011. And I was reading voraciously just any papers on network science I could get my hands on. And one of them ended up randomly being the Bitcoin white paper. And it made my brain pop. So I've been in Bitcoin ever since. It was everything, right? It was property rights without violence. It was the ability to bring like currency and real economy to the internet. It was the ability to give people a way that they could have financial freedom, which is the basis of all freedom. And so it just hit me like an anvil in a comics movie.
When I first got to know Bitcoin, it was a store of value. That's it. And that was a selling point, a feature, not a bug. So for folks who have never heard of Bitcoin L2s or Bitcoin operating system, what are those?
Sure. So actually, I think one way to think about this, right, is in my mind, Bitcoin was never just a store of value, or even more specifically, Bitcoin was never just BTC. What BTC represented was the first asset, the first truly crypto digital asset, the first self-sovereign asset. But what that proved is that we could create such assets, right? We could create digital value. And so I've always thought of Bitcoin as being a system which can act as like a global ledger and a global settlement system for any kind of asset. I think a lot of people thought that way. And in fact, I think one of the people that thought that way was Satoshi. Satoshi, and this is a story that not a lot of people know, but when Bitcoin was released, it had BTC, but it also had the world's first dApp, the world's first decentralized application. And that was a poker game that he built into Bitcoin so that it could be played by anyone in the world, sort of the first censorship-resistant decentralized poker game. And he called it Poker Lobby. And it was stripped out. And so all we have is sort of from Bitcoin version 0.1.0, little remnants of where he forgot to strip out the application. But from the very, very beginning of crypto, there's always been this idea that you have sort of like assets, and then you also have tools for managing those assets, smart contracts, right? Applications, dApps. Now, the thing about Bitcoin is that it's this really powerful ledger, which has been focused on just one asset, BTC, and that has really limited what you can do with Bitcoin. At the same time as we've had these sort of like this ongoing limitation with Bitcoin, like this, we've seen the emergence of 1,000 different other systems. And those systems have emerged because they basically try to answer the same question. They all ask the same question, which is, what is Bitcoin? What can Bitcoin not do? And when they find something that Bitcoin can't do, they say, okay, here's a chain to do that. So what to coming back to your question, you said like, what are Bitcoin L2s? What are these Bitcoin layer twos? What is all of this stuff? What basically it is it's um, an entire ecosystem that has developed over the last few years, and I think we've had several conversations on the show about it. I think I can say I was one of the pioneers of bringing this whole sort of new paradigm of building on Bitcoin to the fore. But it's an attempt to build more complex systems onto Bitcoin. And the truth of the matter is that while there's been a huge amount of excitement and effort around sort of Bitcoin DeFi, Bitcoin layer twos, we've been up until very, very recently super limited in what we could actually do. And sort of that is what brings us to where we are today with BitcoinOS, where finally those limitations are actually dissolving away and Bitcoin is becoming unlimited.
So today, there's a handful of Bitcoin L2s that are starting to pop up. Why is BitcoinOS unique?
Okay, so first thing to understand, so there's the two important pieces here, right? One is BitcoinOS is not a Bitcoin layer 2.
Oh,
I'll come back to what BitcoinOS is in a second. The other thing to understand about all of these Bitcoin layer 2s is that none of them are Bitcoin layer 2s either. But the reason they're not Bitcoin layer 2s is they're separate chains. So they are trying to be either side chains or roll-up chains to Bitcoin. Okay, so you've got Stacks, you've got Rootstock, you've got Merlin, you've got B squared, you've got BitLayer, you've got a huge list now of some of them very, very significant projects that are looking to expand what you can do with Bitcoin. And the problem is that none of them are trustlessly integrated with Bitcoin, not even a single one. And that is where BitcoinOS comes in. So what BitcoinOS is it's an operating system for Bitcoin, which turns Bitcoin into a programmable system, turns Bitcoin into a smart contract system, and allows basically all of these different systems, different layer ones, different layer twos, to integrate directly into Bitcoin.
so it's like a layer zero in a sense.
Well, I would say, um, I would say Bitcoin is basically the layer zero of all of crypto. Uh, and Bitcoin OS is the first permissionless upgrade to Bitcoin,
Mm.
right? So what we've managed to figure out is how we can take any kind of computation, right? And this computation could be thousands of transactions, it could be private transactions, it could be a smart contract, it could be a DEP. We can take that computation and we can fold it down into a type of proof, which is called a zero knowledge proof. In other words, it's zero knowledge because Bitcoin doesn't need to know anything about the computation. So we can take very, very complicated computation, fold it down into a proof that we can write to Bitcoin. And when we write that proof to Bitcoin, we can now verify, validate, and execute that computation on Bitcoin.
I still see some people skeptical about Bitcoin ecosystem, Bitcoin DeFi. To me, there's nothing more obvious because if nothing else, the amount of liquidity that's unable to sort of interact in the Bitcoin ecosystem will finally be unlocked. Could you speak to that Bitcoin liquidity?
Sure. I mean, look, 4 years ago, we had over 100,000 Bitcoin, which is today, I don't know, what is that, like 100 billion plus in value, right? In BlockFi, in Celsius, in Voyager, in a whole bunch of these different sort of like lending protocols, earning yield, or because people wanted to borrow against their Bitcoin. Now, that entire industry, that like $100 billion industry collapsed overnight because these businesses went out of business, right? And people lost a lot of money and it was tragic. But it proved a very important point, which is that there's a huge amount of users out there with a huge amount of Bitcoin who wants to put that Bitcoin to work. And right now, they don't have a way to do that. And in fact, that 100,000 Bitcoin is a massive underestimate because, for example, I would love to be able to earn yield on my Bitcoin or borrow with my Bitcoin or trade my Bitcoin, right? But I don't because I'm not willing to go through a trusted intermediary. I've seen Mt. Gox, I've seen FTX, I've seen sort of all of these different things. I'm not going to take my money, give it to Sam Bankman-Fried and say, please, Mr. Fried, please be careful with my Bitcoin. I do not trust anyone. And so I've been waiting And part of the reason that I'm building systems which allow you to trustlessly use Bitcoin is because I want to use them, right? So I've been waiting for us to expand the envelope of what you can do trustlessly with Bitcoin, expand the envelope of Bitcoin's decentralization. And like me, I know, all the people who were coming into Bitcoin at the same time as me feel the same way. So I know there's hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin out there, uh, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars, which are just, have been sitting, uh, waiting for the opportunity to be put to use. And over the coming months, what we're going to start seeing is people sort of going into their drawers, pulling out their hardware wallets that have been collecting dust, flicking the dust off and plugging their Bitcoin into a new economy.
What's your relationship with Cardano? Because it's or just your partners in general. Because a big value add I feel is engaging that Cardano community, which you are.
So back in July at the Bitcoin National Conference, where Trump sort of started his crypto campaign, we on stage for the first time ever demonstrated Bitcoin mainnet ZK verification. And for people who understood what this meant, it just was electric, right? There was a huge amount of excitement. Not sort of, meme level excitement because I don't think everyone sort of immediately realized what a paradigm shift this is for Bitcoin and all of crypto, but some people noticed. And what we started to see is a lot of developers and a lot of projects reaching out to us asking how can they begin to use this? How can they begin to integrate this? And one of the projects that reached out to us was a project in the Cardano community, and that led to a domino effect where Cardano became one of the main projects that started looking to develop on BitcoinOS. And the Cardano vision was astounding. It was sort of like the vision that I'd always imagined, but they were, but I always thought it would take a really, really long time to get there. And basically, what Cardano realized is Bitcoin is this it's the best ledger, right? It's the most trusted ledger. It's got the most value on it. It's the most secure. It's the best ledger. But it's extremely limited. Even with Bitcoin OS, it's extremely limited in terms of the amount of data that you can put into it. And so Bitcoin OS is designed to allow you to have these external environments, external compute environments where you can build the smart contracts and execute them on Bitcoin. And Cardano realized, wow, this is something that Cardano is like perfect for. Cardano is the biggest smart contract platform out there that is UTXO based, right? Just like Bitcoin is a UTXO system. Cardano has a long-term vision like Bitcoin. And so the Cardano community started getting really excited about this. And so about a month ago in Dubai, I was invited to our Cardano conference, and I spoke there about the fact that Cardano was now integrating Bitcoin OS and what this meant, right? That we would be able to have trustless bridging of BTC, that we would be able to allow the Bitcoin chain for the first time to have eyes and a brain, and those eyes would see what's happening inside of the Cardano chain, and that you would be able to build a DAO or a smart contract application or a lending application or whatever you want, really, on Cardano, and it could execute on Bitcoin mainnet. And it was sort of like the most viral talk I've ever given. It just went crazy. So Cardano it actually partly because of this, I think, rose even further, sort of like in the coin market cap listing
It was a
of chains.
win-win for both parties.
Oh, it's a win-win for everyone. I think we're at a pivotal moment for crypto, because if a moment ago I said to you, everyone up until now had been building with the idea we need to answer the question, what can Bitcoin not do? Well, now Bitcoin can do everything. And so now the question has changed. And the question has become, how can we integrate into Bitcoin and become like the best partner for Bitcoin? How can we be a platform that builds on Bitcoin? And the analogy here is that the internet is, this global network. But on top of the internet, there's multiple trillion-dollar companies that have been built, right? So Bitcoin is the internet of money. And people have been super tribal in crypto because everyone thinks that if someone else is doing well, they're stealing their bags. But that's nonsense, right? The fact that Meta exists does not make Amazon less valuable or Google less valuable. It actually makes them more valuable because the internet as a network, through its network effects, means that the more things you can do on the internet, the more things, the things that are on the internet, the more valuable all of them become. So Bitcoin itself as a network is on its way to being a $100 trillion network. And then there is a question, which are the projects that are going to best integrate into that and become sort of the smart contract platforms, the asset management platforms for Bitcoin? And there's going to be space for several winners to be multi-trillion dollar projects. So Cardano have become the first sort of project to really realize this and to pivot hard into this new world in which we're in, where now projects are going to be competing with themselves. These different chains, these different, what altcoins, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be competing with each other to be the best platform for building on Bitcoin and for integrating transactions that occur on the Bitcoin ledger. And Bitcoin itself is also going to be able to do much more. So we've got BTC, but we're going to also see new kinds of programmable assets being created on Bitcoin. We've already sort of got like a tiny taste of this with ordinals and BRC20s, but those are not programmable tokens. But now we'll be able to create stable coins on Bitcoin. We'll be able to create DAO tokens on Bitcoin. We'll be able to have real world assets on Bitcoin. And so really the opportunity is more than $100 trillion. It's the entire world of finance.
What's on the roadmap for 2025? Like, when is the TGE? What's next?
So we've been making very steady progress. We've already open sourced the ZK verifier. Over the next few weeks, I think we will announce the first trustless bridging of a BTC asset, at least in testnet. We're going to be able to demonstrate the first projects rolling up directly to Bitcoin shortly after that. And then BitcoinOS as a system which allows all of these developers to build different things onto Bitcoin in a way where they all become composable with each other and interoperable with each other. And we basically turn Bitcoin into the interoperability hub for crypto. We expect to release on mainnet the first version of that early next year.
Awesome. And what's the use case of the token? Is it governance?
No, this is a system without governance. The boss token is basically, I think one way, probably the easiest way to explain it is it's like the gas token for Bitcoin, right? So when you are taking this compute, and this compute could be on Cardano, it could be on a Bitcoin rollup, it could be on a dApp, you're taking this compute and you're folding it down into a ZK proof. That is actually a computationally intensive task. And then you need to write that to Bitcoin and verify it on Bitcoin, which is also a computationally intensive task. And so BitcoinOS effectively is a network of nodes. They're like enhanced Bitcoin nodes that can do this work of turning off-chain computation into on-chain proofs. And the first sort of use that you'll have with the boss token is for that, basically utilizing it as a gas token for that purpose.
The reason your relationship with Cardano works so well is because same code bases, as you said. In the future, is there any other major protocol that really would be a good fit, or the people that are going to come on the chain, would they just be Bitcoin developers? Who are you going after?
So first of all, Cardano and Bitcoin don't have the same code base. They have some important similarities, and one of the most important similarities is that they're both the way they. So there's two ways you can sort of on a chain keep track of the assets. One is the account-based system, which you sort of have on Ethereum, where you have an account, right? So Alice has an account, and in that account, she has all of the different assets and those and the number changes. The other way you can do it is keeping track of all of the different transactions. And you can say you had one Bitcoin, and now you sent half of that Bitcoin to Bob, so now you've got half a Bitcoin left. And that's called unspent transaction outputs, or UTXOs. And Bitcoin is a UTXO system, and Cardano is a UTXO system. So it's really easy to map Bitcoin transactions to Cardano transactions. And there's also another really cool advantage that this has, which is when you're providing proofs, UTXO systems actually have a very big advantage because a UTXO is an immutable thing where an account is constantly changing. And so it's harder to prove an account-based system with a ZK proof than it is a UTXO. There are some other advantages as well, but that's a big one. Now, how is this going? So Cardano is not the only project that's looking to do this. I think what we're going to see, we already have like teams of developers who are building sort of like Solana VM on Bitcoin, who are building Ethereum sort of VM on Bitcoin, who are working to bridge these different chains together and provide interoperability between them. And then there's some even crazier things like the ability to take standard, like just regular um, Rust, right? Just a regular programming language and write that to Bitcoin. And I actually think probably by early next year, we will have had the first demonstration of that also demonstrated. So I think different systems are going to specialize in being able to do different things really, really well. And like just an easy example is like Solana might become you could start thinking about these different chains as like neighborhoods in the crypto city, right? So you've got like the fun entertainment zone, which is Solana, and there you go to gamble and the meme coins, and they've got their own hookers and blackjack, and you've got like the more scientific, academically based zone, the university neighborhood, and that's kind of Cardano, and then you've got other systems, like the institutional zone where the big financial companies like BlackRock and Fidelity, they'll have their integration with Bitcoin, and so it's going to look like different types of neighborhoods specializing in different things.
So in 10 years, when Bitcoin DeFi is huge and very much more established, you don't think it'll be, it'll kill Solana or kill Ethereum. It'll be the dominant, but all those bigger chains will still be around?
Well, I think they the I think it's we're entering into a phase now where you adapt or die. And I think those projects, those communities, and those chains which adapt to taking it, look, I mean, Bitcoin's now a more than $2 trillion asset. It's huge, right? They're just a small fraction, like, you know, all of the TVL of Ethereum and Solana and Cardano and all of it together, right? With all of its DeFi and all of its meme tokens is a small fraction of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's growing exponentially. By the end of the 2025, we will be a multi-trillion dollar asset. And I've been talking to people at traditional financial world. Like I had a conversation with someone at BlackRock, and he said to me, look, we basically have in the company two different crypto teams. One crypto team actually has clients, and that's the team that sells people Bitcoin, right? We have the ETF for them. We have other instruments that they can use to buy Bitcoin. That team has clients. And then we have another team, which is super enthusiastic, and they're interested in the future, and they're building DeFi things. And he said, you know what we really want? We want to be able to combine those two teams. Imagine, right, this team, which is currently experimenting on stuff on Ethereum, could build on Bitcoin, and then they could actually sell to the clients because the clients are not interested in anything other than Bitcoin for two reasons. First of all, it's the best known asset, but also all of these other systems feel like software. They're constantly getting updated. They constantly change. You can't trust them. When you are thinking about significant financial activity, you want a system which is reliable, which is permanent, which is going to outlast your asset, right? And the vast majority of the financial world, right? Like if you think like gambling and meme coins and Ponzi, that's like, 1%. The rest of it is mortgages, 35 years, T-bills, 30 years, savings accounts, 50 years, large scale infrastructure, 50, 75-year paybacks, inheritance, multi-generational, right? When you're doing real finance, you want a platform which is going to outlast your asset. And really, the only one which comes anywhere close is Bitcoin. And so we've sort of been self-limiting ourselves to the sort of tiny little speck of the financial world, which is gambling, because the only systems that have sort of had programmability have been software-like. And now finally, the system which has permaware, which is trusted globally, which is, the different countries are talking about utilizing it as a global reserve. And each of these things increases the credibility of Bitcoin, which makes it possible for a large institution like BlackRock to credibly go to their clients and say, look, we're building this on Bitcoin. You can put real world assets on this. You can put, stable coins on this. You can put a derivative. You can tokenize a mortgage on this platform, because this platform is going to be around for 100 years.
What haven't we covered on BitcoinOS?
I can actually give you a little bit of alpha.
Please.
So we have a pretty big ambition. We think that a lot of the crypto space has sort of become, it was set up, it was designed crypto. What got me really excited about it in the first place is it's the system which gets rid of intermediaries, puts everyone on a level playing field, is transparent, and more important than anything, creates a truly global free market. Free markets are the engines of prosperity. And over the last few years, crypto has become a fearful sort of caricature of traditional finance. And we see it with these large VC investments in projects. And then by the time the project sort of launches, it feels like a totally traditional IPO. All of the value has sort of been squeezed out of it. And unfortunately, a lot of them become sort of like down-only projects where retail becomes, and retail, by retail, we mean regular people, become exit liquidity. So we think this is bad in two ways. First of all, it's just bad for the people who are involved in the project, bad for the community. But it's bad also for the entire crypto space, because the fact that we're not a free market anymore means that we've been growing less, we've been seeing less innovation. Anyone who was around in 2016, 2017 remembers, like, there was so many scams, there was so much nonsense with the ICOs, but it was our first encounter with a truly free market, and it created just so much value. Chainlink came out of that, Ethereum came out of that, Binance came out of that. Hundreds of billions in value was created in like an 18-month period. So we want to bring that back, and we want to bring it back on a magnitude which is 100 times larger. And to do that, we have to eat our own dog food. And so the way that we're going to be doing that is we are going to be, with BitcoinOS itself, looking to provide a way for people, for us to distribute, and for people to basically purchase these tokens without going through these intermediaries, and without it already having been pre-sold to a bunch of VCs. And so the little piece of alpha I can give you is that I think by the time this show comes out, we will have created, if you go to bitcoinos.build, I think there'll be a link there where you can start getting a little bit of information about that and probably pre-register.
So this would be something like an airdrop or something to earn. Is that close?
It's definitely not going to be an airdrop.
It's something to earn.
It's something it's going to be, we're going to be looking to give people the opportunity to purchase BitcoinOS. So the whole airdrop thing is part of the same disease, right? Why are they doing airdrops? Because, okay, we give 90% to VCs, and then we do a taste to the community. We have to give them something, and we can't sell them tokens. Well, because BitcoinOS is a truly decentralized project even now, right? So we've got multiple different companies working on it. We've got highly decentralized DAOs like Sovryn working on it. We're not in a position where we are limited in the same way. We're creating an actual product which is decentralized from day zero. And we're building it with a bunch of people who have a lot of experience uh, uh, building other decentralized systems. And one of the cool things that we've realized is over the last years, right, over the last decade, we've built out so much decentralized infrastructure. There's so much social capital out there, real projects that actually have already achieved decentralization, that if you can leverage those, then instead of having a small company or a small group of insiders building the project, you can have multiple already decentralized communities building the project. And so we want to introduce a new way of launching projects. And this won't be applicable for all projects. You'll have to have like a project of significant enough scale that you can attract, the interest of a lot of developers early on and a lot of communities early on. But BitcoinOS is that. And so we intend to try and kickstart a new wave of truly free market token um, sales and access on the Bitcoin ecosystem with Boss.
Link down below. I want to check that out immediately. Sovryn and BitcoinOS, competitors or no?
So Sovryn is one of the DAOs that, so just a little bit of background. Sovryn was the first significant project to basically start building DeFi on Bitcoin. And it became the largest DeFi ecosystem on Bitcoin. And actually, it was through that a lot of people realized that we desperately need a way to truly make these systems trust us with Bitcoin. Because even Sovryn had to utilize a federated peg in order to allow people to utilize their Bitcoin or transact with anything really. So sort of like a little skunk works started developing in the Sovryn ecosystem around how can you build rollups and how can you build ZK verification on Bitcoin. And so Sovryn is one of the leading communities helping to push forward BitcoinOS. And you've been hearing about, like, we've had several conversations about Sovryn. It's like an extremely innovative project. Is it the first DEX on Bitcoin? It was the first lending protocol on Bitcoin. It was the first Bitcoin-backed stablecoin at scale, and a lot of other things. But now, I think of all of the things that Sovryn has birthed, BitcoinOS is probably the most significant to date.
Yago, thank you so much for sharing your time. Links for everything down below. Just final thoughts in general for the Altcoin Daily Army.
Yeah, I have one which I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is I think we, as an industry, are one of the industries that understand ourselves least in the world. And we have this thing where we call ourselves the blockchain industry, which is a terrible, stupid name because nobody wants a blockchain. Our goal is not to produce blockchains. And unfortunately, to a great extent, that is what we've been doing. We've been just pumping out more and more blockchains. What we actually are is the ownership industry. We are an industry which is building the systems which allow people to own assets, to own their identities, to own basically their lives. For the first time in human history, you have direct ownership of everything in your life. And that is our goal. And this has a lot of deep implications. But one of the implications is that what actually matters in an ownership industry is the assets and the ledger. And when you start thinking about that, I think that clarifies a lot of things. Like, where is the actual value? Well, where is there a very valuable ledger which is well trusted and has a powerful network effect? So that's Bitcoin, right? What do we then need? We need systems which can generate asset, which can do asset management. Well, like, for example, we're talking about Cardano. Cardano can be an extremely powerful asset management system which plugs into that ledger. And then the last piece is, can we generate new assets on this ledger? And now for the first time, we can create programmable tokens. And so I think that when you start thinking about things in those terms, you realize that actually most of the interesting activity is not going to be on chain at all, because it's not the chains that are important. Um, and so I think if people want to understand where crypto is going, it's actually off-chain activity, trustless off-chain activity, solvers, aggregators, ZK provers. Um, these are all feel like very, very technical things right now. But that is the future of crypto. And it means that in just a few years, the whole world of crypto is going to look radically different. Transactions are going to feel instantaneous. Everything is going to feel effectively free. People won't know what chain they're interacting on, and they won't care. And practically everything is going to be integrated into the Bitcoin ledger, which is going to become like the central hub and settlement layer for effectively the entire crypto ecosystem. And my final thought on this is something I mentioned before. I think the way I'm thinking about how to think about who the winners are 5 years and 10 years from now, it's going to be those projects which figure out this is where the world is going now at this pivotal moment, and figure out how they can integrate deeply into Bitcoin, and sort of, you know, bring that TVL to life. There's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity there, and the first projects that figure out how to crack that multi-trillion-dollar opportunity are going to be multi-trillion-dollar projects.